I'm Chris Nessie, host of Behind the Mic, Voices of the EPN, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hey, welcome back. Steve here, and today I'm talking with Will and Josh of the HiTech Podcast. This is such a cool conversation. You're going to learn a little bit about what they do in the work world. You're going to find out about how they got into technology as a career field, and you're going to learn a little bit about the changes in their podcast, from the equipment to the formatting and what they do and talk about. You're also going to hear us talk a little bit about AI as well. This is a cool conversation. You're going to have so much fun, and you're going to learn so much. Thanks for listening. And oh, by the way, it'd be so cool if you went to my website, stephenmiletto.com/reviews, and left a review. Could you do that for me? What do you think? Say some nice words and maybe 5 stars. Thanks so much. You are awesome. Enjoy the show.
It's the Education Podcast, your favorite show, with lots of groovy guests and they share what they know. So crank it up to 10 and let your neighbors know that here's another show with Dr. Steve Miletto. Teaching, learning, leading K12. Teaching, learning, leading K12. Teaching, learning, leading K12. With Dr. Steve Miletto.
Today I'm talking with Will and Josh of the HiTech Podcast. The HiTech Podcast started because 2 friends couldn't shut up about their jobs, and their wives were tired of listening to it on date night. So we decided to bring our conversation to you, sharing our expertise and tomfoolery for all to hear. We exist to help you and ourselves process the best ways to harness technology in the traditional or virtual classroom. Here's a little bit about Josh. A lover of technology, theology, and learning. I found my love for education early on as a college student. Higher education changed my life, and that experience pushes me to always pursue better learning experiences. I'm always looking for ways we can harness tech to enhance our teaching and learning. And some about Will. An educator by heart and practice, I caught the bug for teaching in the martial arts, but I extended that into higher education and nonprofit education, always looking to find the best tools and methods to solve our teaching and learning problems. Will and Josh, thanks for being here, and say hi to everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Thanks for having us, Steve.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Steve.
Well, this is cool to have you guys on. I've been a follower for a while, a subscriber, which term you want to use in this strange world that we have, and I've enjoyed your show and learned a lot, and so this is cool to have you on my show. And so I got to start off by saying, let's start by talking about what really got you interested in technology. All right, because I'm someone who grew up in Florida. And as a kid, this really dates me, but it's Apollo, and they bring the TV sets in, and you watch Apollo, and then later when I'm in high school and then in college, it's all about the space shuttle program and stuff like that, and that had a lot to do with it. But what got you into it? Was it the Starship Enterprise? Was it Marvin? I don't know if you know that reference to Marvin, a paranoid android. But the R2D2. How about Hal? I don't know if you know that reference either. Hal is
that's the car, the car with the voice.
Oh no, this is a different one. I wondered if you might think that. If you look at the initials and know that if I said IBM, HAL is just look at where they come in the alphabet, and HAL is the name of the AI from 2001: A Space Odyssey, and that's segment where he decides
I haven't seen that actually.
The only part of it you really need to really worry about is the part with Hal and Dave. Because especially in today's world, because we're going to talk about AI in a little bit, but Hal decides that Dave doesn't need to exist any longer. Anyway, books, a parent who maybe fixed things all the time, took things apart. What is it that got you going in this direction of technology? What pushed you that way?
For me, it was 2 things. One, if anyone grew up with a Nintendo Entertainment Center system, they had to figure out how to plug the thing into the TVs as the TVs kept changing, and then the cartridges didn't always work. You had to blow in them. Let's just talk the earliest possible troubleshooting, the most simple technical troubleshooting. How do I get my video games to play? But I'd say that's what just started it for me. Playing video games, being engaged with the technology, why doesn't it work if this isn't plugged in versus that's plugged in, figuring out how it worked. But after that, It was really, I will credit MySpace. MySpace as a platform allowed you to like edit the HTML and the CSS of your page, to like put a song in the background, have like stars streaming through your screen and stuff, like weird stuff like that, right? And that would be probably the very first tech stuff that I was like, oh, this isn't just like click and press. Like I need to like learn something, figure out how to make this better. That was my introduction.
Cool.
Yeah, mine is similar, actually, ironically. I don't know if it was Nintendo. I mean, I guess Nintendo would have been the first console I had, but gaming was the thing that got me into technology first, playing around with that, and just figuring out how it worked. And even on the computer side, eventually getting into computer gaming and stuff like that is really what kind of got me interested in the computer side of technology. But then also, ironically, MySpace.
Wow!
I was.
We did not prepare this.
We did not prepare this. It was a combo of that and being in a band. I was in a band for the earlier part of my life, and so like the audio technology side of things was a must as a part of that. And like Will's mentioning, although my use was a little bit different, we had a band MySpace and things like that, so we had to like learn to do some of like the HTML and things like that. And so I just eventually kind of just enjoyed it, and it became a part of myself. And and I also love Star Wars, as if you could see my background.
Yes.
So I'm a nerd at heart.
Nice. I love it. Yes. I got a feeling that between Nintendo and Star Wars, that there's a lot of things that a lot of people that are into technology, just because. And I've experienced what you're talking about, Will, with you have to blow on the cartridge. It's like, oh, come on,
it won't turn on. What?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. It rocked my world when I found out you weren't supposed to do that. That there's a thing that tells you not to blow on the Nintendo thing. So I was like, that can't be true. That's
no one
my
listened.
Entire childhood.
That's funny. That's awesome. Yes. And then of course, there's nothing more amazing as, I wonder how many people, one day I'm going to have my own robot like that thing. All right. It's going to, so, gotta love that. So good stuff. All right. So tell us what you do in your work world, because that's what I'm curious about here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll jump in first. So I work in what's called the Office of Digital Learning. So I work in higher education, and our office helps design and develop fully online courses and hybrid courses. So in our context in higher ed, like an instructor or faculty member who we call a subject matter expert works with a team of an instructional designer, technologist, and an editor, and they all work together to kind of build fully online courses. So I oversee the technology side of our team, the instructional technologists. So I work in that area, building courses, integrating ed tech, things like that. And I also teach as an adjunct in one of the academic departments at our institution. So I teach when I can within that. So
very cool.
Yeah. I used to do that. I literally worked at Josh's institution. When I left the position, he came and took it. I went on to another institution or two, and then 2020 happened, and subsequently 2021, and my life changed a good bit. So I moved over into corporate. I'm in e-learning and development in the corporate space at this point, which I'm still running like the learning management system. I still do a lot of data and reporting on learning and analytics. I support with vendors and getting content integrated from third parties, but also build learning content at that point. So, we both have a lot of like the technical stuff, and that's like maybe what is caught first when we say HiTech Podcast, but all of it comes back from our love of education. Like we both do this stuff to try and make the learning better and more effective for people, so it's a little bit of where we're coming from.
Very cool. Very cool. This is, and there's some stuff from your episodes and then other stuff that I just want to ask you, because I have part of my world touches, has me working through I do some performance coaching, leadership coaching with people in degree programs. And so the university that I do that through has, they use lots of technology, and the professors there have access to lots of technology. And so just keep that thought, because that's going to be behind one of my questions in just a minute.
All right.
Because I learned some valuable things as I was trying to get used to who knew what and who didn't know what. But coming back to that, so I'm a subscriber, a follower to HiTech Podcast. You got an awesome podcast there, and you got cool stuff happening. And I gotta say this because I laughed. I was trying not to laugh as I was reading that intro that I stole from your one of your pages there. But it was awesome because if I ever want to make any of my family members roll my eyes, all I have to do is use the words podcast. All right, yep. Dad, please don't go there. Or my wife will say, yeah, whatever, move on. So
Next.
And so that just I love that part there because that's just. I feel you, man.
Oh, I mean, 2020, like what was any of us doing, right? Talking to our best friends, getting on the internet a lot with each other. And Josh and I were just like, we got to do this. This has got to happen.
Yeah. Now it's the reverse of it. Like we talk about work stuff at the podcast, but like, if we talk about the podcast around our wives, that's a different dynamic. So
nice. I all I know is that all I got to do is mention any of that because my family is very proud of themselves. This includes my wife and my sons who are, in the work world. They're out in their worlds, and they like to say, they're very proud of the fact they've never listened to my podcast. And I'm like, how can you do that?
That's my wife.
Nice.
Josh's wife has listened, but mine has listened to one episode, maybe. So,
Nice.
That's it. Out of 100.
It's one of those things where you're like, guys, because at least now I can brag to my listeners and say, not one of them is my family. So, but
they're real numbers, folks.
They're real numbers. Yes, they're not. I like that. So when you said, I got to do this podcast, I got to make it happen. I know you're dealing with COVID and all that sort of stuff, but I mean, what was it that you said, this is the thing, this is the podcast? I mean, it's high tech. What made that happen?
I think that we really came back to that higher education route. I was still in higher education as we were formulating the idea. And so we just wanted to say like, and actually Josh might have a little bit more to this, but like, we're like, really wasn't something that we felt was hitting this subject for us. And so we wanted to create what we couldn't find. But Josh, you were looking for it specifically, right?
Yeah. So like some of the context as Will alluded to already, and we've talked about on our podcast. I had very little background in this area before I came. I was actually working as a pastor originally, and I was looking to transition. I'd been doing TA work at a grad level at the institution I work at now that Will was at that point, and I was looking to transition. Will had decided to leave his position for a handful of reasons, and then some dynamics had changed, and he felt like it wasn't as a horrible environment anymore, and was like, hey, I'm still leaving, but I think you could do well at this, and I know you're looking to get into higher ed. We consider applying. So I did, and somehow got the job. I don't, they're like, here, you can be I was administering our LMS, and I was an instructional technologist. So I was helping faculty integrate technology, things like that. And so I got into this job, and I did what basically any other like 20-something white guy does when he doesn't know what he's supposed to be doing. He's like, I'll find podcasts about this topic, because I had originally had like a 40-minute commute to work until we had moved closer to where I work now. But I remember, Will, you were like painting an attic. I remember this conversation like distinctly. You were painting an attic, and we were looking for houses in the city that we live in now. And I remember talking to him and being like, I've found a bunch of podcasts. At the time, I didn't find EU Podcast Network, so I hadn't found this group of podcasts, but I found a handful, and they were good, but they were very K12 focused, which was okay. Like I could take stuff away from that, but as somebody who was newer and didn't know as much about this area, I was really looking for people who were in similar circumstances that I was in, and I wasn't finding it. And the other thing that Will and I loved was being able to just like find the plethora of tools and apps that are out there to open the spectrum of what you can do. And we felt like there weren't a lot of podcasts that were doing that. And I remember Will joking, going, well, we could start a podcast. And we got that idea. It fell apart until COVID happened, and then we were like, "Well, we're bored now because we're all locked up. I guess we could make we could do that podcast thing we were gonna do." So, and that's how it was born.
Josh helped us find the niche, and then we were both like, because of some of my connections to K12, I always have found that there's like a lot of great tools being used in K12 that higher education faculty don't know about. Yeah. So we felt like this was that perfect marriage of like, hey, the audience might exist to want to hear from us, and these folks don't know about the dozens and dozens, hundreds of tools that exist. So high tech, higher education, educational technology.
I love it. That's awesome. And it's so cool because it's funny. I'd been kind of starting to listen to some podcasts way back when, and I'm like, at the time I was a high school principal, and I'm like, I don't know if I can start one, because it wasn't as, now that it's so easy to get the equipment and to be started in a heartbeat. And, but at the time, there's kind of some confusing information out about there, because people wanted to sell you these packages of equipment, and they're talking some pretty expensive equipment. And I started off with just a handheld recorder. Now, I don't want to direct people to those episodes, because it was a handheld recorder. All right. So I got to get you to talk about, can you talk a little bit about some experiences you had over the time with the changes of, like the evolution of your equipment or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we're the same way. If you go back to episode 1, I cringe a little bit listening to, because, so for those who can't see, Will's wearing like a gaming headset right now, and he's not using the mic on it, but that was all we had at the time. So we both had that identical headset, and we would just record on that. We would record on Zoom was the starting place of how we would do things. And I still laugh. We don't do this anymore. But Will would hold a Bluetooth speaker up to his mic so that I could clap to like figure out where the start of our episodes were, so Will could align our audio together, and we could nail things. So we started off that way, and it wasn't too long. Well, I don't remember how long it took us. Eventually we found, like, for those who don't know what it really is, but like if you're looking at podcaster mics, they're often referenced as condenser mics is how they're utilized. We bought some cheap ones off of Amazon, some equipment, and eventually moved off of Zoom. We found that Zoom's audio recording was okay, but there were some things we wanted to tweak about it. So we moved to a platform called Zencastr and started doing recording there. We've been using it for guest recording for a while, and moved there, and we kind of evolved over time. We actually haven't really upgraded equipment in a while, although that's probably coming because we've been trying to make money in the podcast. So we'll see. We're upgrading. I think the only thing we've upgraded is both Will and I now have these digital like analog tools that we can control audio for different devices and things like that on our computer. So, and we've upgraded some lighting. The big upgrade was I don't remember what season we did it in, but we eventually switched to video. It was something Will and I had always wanted to do. So we switched to video about a year ago, and that required us to think about lighting and things like that, because now people could see us. And think about clothes, even though I wear pretty much the same shirt most every week.
Josh has a Tuesday shirt.
I have a Tuesday shirt. I'm wearing it. I'm actually wearing it on a Monday today.
Wow, surprise.
Yeah, so tomorrow should be a change up. But yeah, that was basically kind of our equipment changes and the way we tweak things. Well, I don't know if I add some.
Just to speak to like some of the software and stuff, like we were using Zoom, but like I wanted to be able to, and I don't remember what's changed and why something, but like we had an issue with the fact that Zoom gave me like one audio file, and I wanted to be able to control, because ironically we had the same microphone, but our audio levels came through differently. Oh, wow. He would be louder, I'd be quieter or something. So like I wanted separate audio files to have more minute control on the editing front. And that's where literally we would both run Audacity, free software on each of our computers. And I just the clap to sync up the audio files across our computers across distance. Right? And it was the tape approach, but yes, moving to something like Zencastr, which has an integrated platform, and I can get all the files out separately. That was a big win for us functionally as a platform.
That's cool. It's interesting here. The stages that we go through, especially because you know your own stuff, and then when you hear other people's stories about the same thing, and because you've just made that progress, and some of it comes by I got to make this better too, or just simply by stumbling into it, and it's
that's usually it.
Yeah, I first started off with after I was using. Oh, now I can't even believe I can't think of the name of it. What was the thing that came with all computers, kind of, sort of, with the
on Macs or PCs?
PCs.
Just like.
Oh, I can't believe it.
I don't even know.
I'm talking about when people would you connect online. So like Zoom has really kind of taken its place. Skype, thank you. Jeez, I don't know. I mean, Skype had some really serious, interesting issues. All right, and it's like all of a sudden, I don't think they can hear me anymore. I think everybody's frozen, that type of thing. And it's like, but I use Zoom now, and been using Zoom for a little bit, but it was all because a guest one time, I was having frustrations with the Skype, and they said, have you thought about in our business where we use Zoom? And this was before COVID. So this is what was kind of cool, is that I had made the transition a little bit before that. So I was ready for it, but interesting stuff. I appreciate you talking about that. Just to know, one of the things that really encouraged me, I have to say this. I like, not only do I like Star Wars, I like Star Trek, and I also am a comic collector of Spider-Man, and so I was at there you go. And I was at a convention with my son, and we were walking in, and this was this is a bunch of years ago, and there are these. And by the way, you have to know that you got in free if you dressed up as a character. So I'm dressed up as Fred Flintstone, and he was dressed up as Mario. And so that it has a lot to do with the image also at the time. But there were these two guys at the front who were doing a podcast with each other, and they were having a blast. And that was kind of what made me say, I got to go from just listening to doing one. Was I saw those guys having a blast. There's no scripts. They're talking comic books. I don't even know if they really were, coherent about what they were talking about or not, but they're having so much fun. That's what shifted me. So, but
that was it for us. And like I said, like we started with software and the tech we had, like we didn't spend $1 to start. Very shortly thereafter, we wanted the condenser mics. We spent but even these are only like $50 mics. Like it was something for us. We for a long time, we have just called this a hobby cast. Nice. Right? Like it's something we enjoy doing, and we take as little effort to get into it as possible. We've continued to improve our practice as we've learned new techniques, gotten new stuff, that kind of thing. This was a lot of fun.
It's just so cool because I like sharing that with people listening, because it's like, you two, you just start. It's you get to try it and figure it out, and then progress as you go. And I think that's important for people to understand, because it's just I think that's what we all do, is at some point, unless we're Hollywood actors who actually hire people to do everything but the voice,
Smartless. Who?
Right. Exactly. All right. So let's talk about this. I mean, how about the formatting of his show? I mean, did HiTech evolve from, the original concept to where it is now? I mean, think about that for just a little bit. Because I do know one thing I brought up before we started talking. You had this images thing about having people sending you pictures of animals.
Yeah, that's one of those things that I think is also the trial and error, right? Like we started off and we had a very hard line in our heads of like, let's do 50% pedagogy and 50% technology. Like the episodes will be 50-50. I'm not sure it's ever been that. The tech sometimes gets a little longer, but more often than not, it's like a 60-40, 70-30 distribution, where we just get into the methodology conversation and go deep, and then the tech is like, all right, we also have an app today.
Nice.
Let's bring that up. But we used to do some different things. When we'd start, we'd ask a question, or we'd do asking the audience to email us things. Really, we're just trying to get engagement, see if people were listening or not. And we got a few pictures here and there, and it's fun and interesting. But I think the most recent thing we did was we did 50 episodes or something. We called that a season. We just kept recording forever. We're like, this is a season. We very recently, in going into 23, decided we're going to structure our seasons. Each season's 15 episodes. We're going to figure out what we can eat, what each season's going to kind of focus on or contain. And for us, actually, it's just more about pacing, right? We just started recording every Tuesday night, and we never took a break. Sometimes it was 2 episodes, 3 episodes in a night. We just kept recording every week, and it's not necessarily sustainable forever. So picking up Josh brought some great strategies to us. He's like, let's do a 6-week cycle, 4 recording, 2 not recording, cycle this around, and then we'll be able to control our 15 episode seasons a lot more clearly, which gives us more control of what we want to talk about. I think, is it being said here first for the first time? Maybe we're looking at adjusting the audience. We were looking at expanding our I've been in corporate now for 2+ years. And so it doesn't have to just be higher education. It never really was, because we talked about K12 too, but we might just get to more general tech and more general workforce methodology. And we're seeing what's going to happen, but we've come somewhere, and we've still got plenty of places to go.
I was going to say, that's the similar thing. It's the I think the core of what we wanted to do, which is both kind of focus on learning and technology, is still there and has always been there. But I would definitely say that that's been kind of the bigger evolution of the podcast. Is when we first started, it was just we kept recording until we didn't know what to do. Like we wanted to take a break, and then we were like, well, we'll call that a season. And we, like Will said, I think our first season, if you open up our website, which is where it's clearly organized by that, it's you'll see like the first season's like 50 something episodes, but season 4, it's like 15. We decided to take it in smaller chunks. And that has forced us to be more selective about what we focus on. There were times Will and I would do like in a season, we do like series occasionally where it's like a handful of episodes are focused on the same topic and are organized kind of in a structure. And we would do that a lot during a season. We ended up wearing ourselves out because we were just like, we were doing these constant series all the time. And those require a lot more planning than just recording episodes. And so when we switched to our organized seasons, we also switched to like, okay, we're only doing one series per season. The rest of everything else will be either it's just about a topic, having fun with stuff. Maybe it's a short 2-parter episode so we don't feel like forcing it into one episode. We get a bunch of guests. I think that's been the evolution. And like Will said, kind of the next step for us is we're still going to be talking about education. That will still be a major focus of ours. But with Will's change and some of like my different interests and things like that, we want to not just limit ourselves to talk just higher ed, but there's a lot of learning and education going on in adult life outside of higher ed area that we want to dive into. I think the interesting topic that Will and I kind of fell into is, yes, we're talking about higher education, pedagogy, all those things. Will and I work in a slightly different environment than a lot of other people that come onto our podcast and our guests. We're not necessarily fully teachers all the time. We're mostly actually developing learning content from a pedagogical side while also doing teaching on the side. So that's kind of caused us to have a slightly different bent in the podcast where we tend to talk more about the process of creating things, looking through things, while also talking about teaching as well when we get there.
Very cool. This is, and it's a good thing to have that, at least my experience, to kind of evolve and, make the ebbs and flows as you start finding out things that you're addressing or that are people's thoughts and stuff like that. Cause it's, it is kind of.
And if we started out with like a podcast about, let's just say Nissan, right? # not a sponsor. But if that was a podcast about Nissan and we ran out of cars and made by Nissan, like the podcast's over. Like there's something to like a limited scope podcast. It's okay to have a lifespan, but Josh and I don't intend to have a limited scope. We don't want to. Like this is something we just enjoy doing. It's both our hobby. We're going pro, if you will, semi-pro maybe. And so We're just using the space that we have to keep talking.
And that is another end of the evolution where like we've been having a lot more guests that are also in K12. And Will and I still try to then take that information and kind of use his and I's perspectives on higher ed and above, how that might apply to those areas. But we originally, when we first started, were very tentative about, like, do we just bring in guests that are in higher ed or who branch areas? And we realized, well, we're limiting ourselves too much. There's a lot of knowledge across all spaces, and it doesn't matter what space we're in. We were just talking on House of Ed Tech with Chris about this. Like, it doesn't matter what space you're in. There's a lot to learn from across those areas.
Oh, most definitely. This is, and it it's funny because as you're talking about that, because just a note, I mean, mine's Teaching Learning Leading K12, right? Well, it basically, I say I can just about attach anything to one of those 3 words. All right. So, yes. And that's kind of where I go with when I'm trying to figure out how to, because I don't want it to become stale. I want to be able to go out there and find different topics. And so I like that about what your different shows do, that in that you have different things that I guess come to people's attention or whatever, or to your attention. And so it's cool. And which brings me to this, I have to ask, because being technology people, all right, and doing the types of jobs or that you either do now or used to do, you have to have a lot of people asking you different types of questions or the same types of questions. And I was wondering if you have some common ones that people say, help, I need some help. And it's, is there one type that constantly is brought to your attention?
Yeah. I mean, I'll jump at this first. Not leaving my corporate buddy out, but I'll talk a little bit about the higher ed questions. So in our area, to context, the technology oversees our learning management system. So which we use Canvas. So they're responsible for technical support and things like that. A lot of the questions we get most often, in my experience, are the basic LMS questions. Like those are a lot. We get way more of those than we do like I kill and I'm excited for those times when I get the faculty member who really wants to get creative and they're like a problem we need to solve. A lot of times it's more of like, just how do I create an assignment that students aren't confused by? Like that's
how to use the grade book.
Right? Yeah, how to use the grade book, things like that. So those are common questions. I think in the classroom part of things, a lot of times it's just like, we've been getting a lot more questions about like, how do we deal with students who are kind of remote in certain areas? Like there's still a push for some of those. We're doing a lot of push into online too. So there's a lot of questions towards us about just like technology in online education. What does it look? How do you use this? How do you do this? And AI is definitely the other big element. Like in my situation, my team is the one who's done the presentations on AI, pretending like we're experts on something that keeps changing every single day. We get a lot of questions from faculty right now about that, like how to figure out if something's AI written, what can AI do? There's a lot of questions around those areas.
And I'd say just on mine, like the most unique thing I've ever been asked was related to the pandemic. At the institution I was at the moment, a SCUBA instructor came in and said, how am I supposed to teach this online? And, I've dealt with a lot of what Josh is saying, but like, that's one that stands out. That's a big fun story for our podcast.
That's when Will built a pool in the guy's house and
helped him, in
SCUBA video recording.
That was one of those ones we definitely all scratched our head like, yeah, how are you supposed to teach SCUBA online? The ballroom dancer came to us and asked that, and we said, well, do you have a partner or someone at home? Can you do some filming? So that was something we were able to actually accommodate. And If you think about that was a fun one to like work through. I also did Tai Chi. I had a Tai Chi instructor. These are things that you'd imagine having a physical presence is required to teach. I'd say it is probably optimal to teach with physical presence, but we made it work. Like I'm not saying it's the same, but we got that ballroom class done. We got that Tai Chi class done. It took a lot of creative filming, creative assignments, lots of repetition, getting the student to send again and say like, that wasn't a great angle or cut, or you missed a couple moves, send me another video. Those are some really, you're asking like maybe for more like consistent ones we have, but those are some top ones I've had with that frankly stretch muscles.
No, those are cool ones. That's because it's funny. I have to say this because I really like a lot of different type of pop culture type things, and I don't know if you ever watched the show IT Crowd.
I've watched a season or two. Yeah.
Oh, I love that show.
I love it, and one of my favorite responses is, "Have you tried turning it off and on? Call me back after you've done that." And there's so many cool things. Well, one of the things that I was going to tell you, I was at the college level, and where I do this coaching. Now I'm at K-12. That's where my work is, and I work as support for them now, and. But it's just funny when you go to this college and they have a IT department, and if you need help, they teach classes and stuff. I've taken a couple of classes, which is really cool, and I'm in an audience that's, I'm getting up there, all right now, but I still feel like I'm 30 years younger than everybody around me, and it's like wow, because some of the questions asked really go with that. Did you try turning it off and on type of questions, and so I go to this, so for the past 8 years, I've been Google-fied, all right? I've been in a world that's all about Google this and Google that, so I've been learning all about Google. Well, now I've transitioned to a new world, and this new world, we're Microsoftified, Outlook-ified, and so I'm trying to learn how to do all this stuff. And what's cool is I have someone who's teaching me the right ways of doing this stuff, because long back in my career, I taught myself these different things by myself, and so I had these gaps.
Right.
But what's funny is that in this Microsoft Online version, you can send links to your documents and stuff like that, like you can in Google, but it's their version of it. Well, what's funny, what I've run into in the college world is that they don't understand that when when you send that link, it's live, and you can go in and you can change things and everything, and it's actually there. And instead, they want you to download it. They want you to attach it and then download it. And so you got to sign something. Then they want you to scan it and put it back. And it's like, come on, you have this ability. you have. I had someone saying, your document's not there. Your document's not there. I said, I keep sending you. And then I realized what they were looking for. They weren't looking for the link. They were looking for the downloaded attached file.
Attachment. Yep.
See, if I could bring you to my college environment and have you just like, be another person to preach, be fantastic. That's our team, like our internal team that works on development and stuff. We've moved beyond Word Online and Google and using some of the other bigger tools that are now becoming more popular in that space. But the amount of people that I get attachments from that want to like collaborate on things, and I want to be like, guys, this is not, we don't have to do this anymore. Stop sending me hard. Like I just had that, like I send in my syllabus and get it revised. And the department assistant sent me the syllabus as a stock document with comments on it. And I wanted to be like, we could have just had a link that you could have seen what together. I did. You could have, I don't understand why do we have to do this today?
What's even better, it's worse. Actually, it's worse. But what's even better is when I get at work now in the corporate world, I get a Google Doc shared link. We're all in it together because Google doesn't have a file, right? It doesn't exist. And people go in there and start doing, well, I'm going to write all of my words in red. You write all your words in purple. You choose, pick your color so that we can all see who's like, no. Everyone write in black and use comments if you have questions. There's the whole like the email threads, right? Like, yeah, I'll write in blue, you write in red. I write in blue, you write in red. Okay, but not with a live Google synchronous document or Microsoft Online synchronous documents.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need to.
It's funny how some practices just kind of die. They don't,
and some don't.
It's right, and some don't.
Just keep coming.
It's like, I got to do this. One of my favorite commercials has been it's a few years old now, but it's the one where the guy's trying to explain to his mom that because she wants to show him how she's posted on her wall all the things she's been doing, and she's pasted the stuff up on her living room wall or whatever. He's like, that's not how this works.
That's good.
So good stuff. I mean, I figure you guys have some good stories about something like that. It's kind of like, if you are familiar with who Marvin the Paranoid Android is, I mean, one of my favorite things is that comes out in that book is that he talks about, he has like the brain of the size of the universe. And they asked me Marvin, can you go get this? Can you go get that? And so I can kind of imagine you running. And for those of you who are listening who don't know what I'm geeking out about, this is the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So
Gotcha.
My hotspot on my phone, Steve, I've named my hotspot a towel.
Nice. Yes.
Because you should never leave home without one.
Love it.
Never.
Love it. Thank you.
Appreciate this. Just real quick side note on that thing. I read the book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and then also that has a special place in my heart because one time I got grounded in middle school. Like I wasn't allowed to watch TV. Like it was a long time. I had done something really dumb. I was grounded for like 6 months, and I wasn't allowed to watch TV for all of those 6 months. But I found a loophole. They weren't allowed. They didn't take my iPod away. And a 32 gig iPod with like that little screen, right?
Nice.
The only movie I had on that iPod was The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, nice. And I watched it on repeat for like 6 months. So I have the entire movie memorized. We
need to watch that together, Josh. I think I would enjoy watching that with you.
There's nothing better than that on rewind. I can imagine, on over and over again. Because there's so many lines, man. And if you've never seen the BBC show on the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, if you like it, you got to watch that because there's voices there that will stick with you as the voices of all these characters after you've watched it. But there's nothing better than those stories and the sarcasm involved,
I just wrote down a note. I didn't even know it was a thing, the BBC version, so I want to track that down.
It's a good time.
It's good. It was a radio show, and then they took the same actors and they did I keep wanting to say live action, but not live action. It was like old Doctor Who. They did a TV show version of it with the same actors who were the voices. So you see them, Zaphod Beeblebrox and Arthur Dent and all of them. And it's just Eddie, the shipboard computer will get stuck in your head as that's what AI sounds like to
That's
me.
what it
All
should
right.
sound
So
like.
yes, exactly. Hi guys. Anyway, good stuff. So, sorry, I digress just a little bit. I found a lot of times I ask somebody if they know what that is and they go, huh? And I go, oh, you're killing me.
When you find someone who knows,
Yes!
you hold tight. Yes.
Exactly. You know what? All right. So let's use that to get into AI. I've been saving AI because you guys have you've been talking about AI on your show and stuff like this, and the whole world's kind of talking about AI, and it's really kind of interesting because in just a few short couple of months, we've gone from, oh my gosh, the world is falling apart and we'll have to outlaw it to it can be helpful. And now I think we're back around to outlawing it again. You know,
spin the wheel. Like, where are we this month?
Exactly. It's like, whoa, my gosh. Well, you know, let's talk about that for a second. You know, it's really popular. I mean, what do you think? Is this AI, or are we about to introduce Skynet? And if you don't know that reference, I mean, that's the one that creates the Terminators to destroy humanity. I mean, what is this? What's going on with AI? What do you guys think?
It's not new. You know, that's one of the things that try and find some peace. And if you knew me personally, if we were grabbing a pint down the street, you know, I would tell you how much I hate technology like this and the privacy invasion and my personal, like, there's certain things I'm close to Marvin on the paranoid. But
we'll like technology, but then also like wants to live in a cabin without any connection to technology and a shotgun. So
yes.
It's a mixture of things.
But at that same stroke, like I find a lot of comfort in the fact that this isn't actually new. We've been using language model and chat bots, things like this. Like that's what made this all popular in this moment. It's existed for quite some time. I was a teenager. I was talking to chat bots on AIM, right? AOL Instant Messenger, and they could reply and talk to me for an hour without giving me a repeated response, right?
Nice.
Like that meant that someone had done enough work in those bots to give them a kind of variety and variables that if you asked a question, it could give a different response and it could have a conversation with you. What happened in November 22 is that OpenAI released a large language model that uses what we would almost call an infinite database of language to auto-generate those responses. So before then, the prevailing AI that we were experiencing, someone was, I'd say, manually programming. They could probably come up with certain algorithms, make some smaller cadence that's like that didn't have literally create everything. But like I had a colleague in 2017 or 18 who made a chatbot in a higher education classroom, and they used it as like a virtual TA, right? If you could ask a question about the syllabus, like they had put the entire syllabus into the chatbot. And so if you ask like, hey, what's the day the class meets, it would scan the syllabus and respond in a couple seconds. That's like the proto ChatGPT. Now it can do it instantaneously and searches almost the internet's worth of information. That's what happened. We didn't even take a jump. We leapfrogged like 6 stages of development from like, let me program all this stuff into something to, all right, here, use the internet as your reference, answer the person. And if anybody's not familiar, ChatGPT is specifically locked to what, 2021 or 2020?
Well, I mean, 4 is access the internet.
Oh,
so,
4. Oh, okay. Well, so 4 now just accesses the whole darned internet. Good luck. We're done. Send me back to my cabin with the shotgun. But
Nice.
The thing that's happening in this moment is we just have exponentially grown past anything we could expect. We just took a huge leap forward, and that's where everybody's freaking out. They don't have any like what's the guardrails on this? What are we supposed to do if this goes haywire? Can it? Nobody knows those answers, and I think some of it's fun. Just jump in the playground, jump in the sandbox, and start tossing dirt. But on the other side, like we're in a cycle now of like more laws coming back. Like maybe should this be banned? Maybe this shouldn't be, or what parts of it should be or shouldn't be.
Yeah,
it's an interesting
I think
thing.
We were talking about it in our, like you referenced, our series that we just recently finished, Opening AI. This has been Will and I's attempt at kind of talking through it, and we've had some experts on to talk about different things. Will and I, by all means, are not technical experts in ChatGPT or AI. We know enough about it to sound smart. We're kind of like ChatGPT about ChatGPT, but we know enough to talk about it. I think I agree. It's one of those things where it's not something new. It's and I think could be a helpful resource. I think there's some interesting ways we can play around with it. We've talked a lot in a series about that. This whole thing we're experiencing with ChatGPT, just in a tech wise, is not new either. Like, you can pull quotes from what people are dropping in news articles and Twitter and social media, and what administrators are saying as they're coming up with limiting policies. You could basically copy and paste that, take it back to when the calculator came out, or when there's a famous statement that there was a letter sent to the president when they first came out with trains, that they needed to stop coming out with trains because it was going to ruin society.
Nice.
We've been through this before, that technology just evolves, and there's some areas that I do think we need to be discerning in how we use it and how we leverage it. And I do think we should be asking important questions about how does this impact our students and the way they think and what they do, and come back to some of our core conversations about digital citizenship and how we interact with the digital world and the internet and all the things that we're looking at. I've joked on our podcast a couple of different times. If I'm fearful about anything, it's not about AI. It's just about what we're going to do as humans
Nice.
to abuse it. But there's a lot of really cool ways we've shared on our podcast, a lot of ways people are trying to leverage it, from automating some of the content creation or things that we don't like doing that can cut down some of the time. I shared recently on our podcast, there's a tool called ID Assist that you can actually use to get started writing quiz questions. And I don't know about anybody who's written quiz questions. It's a painful and obnoxious process. And this tool, actually, they built on top of the AI Bloom's taxonomy. So it'll actually leverage Bloom's taxonomy to build questions. Are they perfect? By no means. We should edit them, clean them up. But I have to admit, they're probably better than what my first attempt at quiz questions would have been before I edited my own work. So it kind of cuts down on some of that area. So I think there's a lot of potential there. And I think we can't ignore it. AI is going to continue to grow in its use. We see every technology tool across the spectrum trying to race to figure out how they can come up with their own AI assistant or AI editor or AI image creator or whatever it may be. And honestly, they're fun to play with. We should have some creativity and be willing to, even with our students, not be afraid of leveraging the tool. At the end of the day, I keep coming back to, if assignments are designed well and they're not something people could just Google search and copy and paste into documents, ChatGPT and AI shouldn't be able to just do the assignment for your students either. So if you're working on good assignments, the AI can't do it. In fact, there's been articles recently about, for people doing math, because they connected ChatGPT 4 to the internet, it has been getting dumber, and is actually got, I think it was like, when it first came out, it was like an 80% success rate or something with math, and it's down to like a 3%. Don't quote me on that. I have to find the article.
It's a dramatic
but
change.
Because it's pulling more data from us, it got dumber, and it's actually not even as successful at math problems as it was when they first released it. So
got access to the wrong database.
Yeah. It was doing great until they were like, well, what if we give it all the information humanity puts on the internet? That feels like probably a good.
It just hits Reddit
move.
and it breaks.
Yeah, it just blows up.
I like that. That's a good explanation for that. That's that logic question or whatever. It's like, this makes no sense. These people are stupid. Goodbye. So long, and thanks for all the fish. That's nice. So I know we're coming up to the end. I could talk to you guys all day. You're probably ready to shut me off, but at the same time, this has been cool. And I got to ask you this. You do a commercial for us real quick. Why should educators of whatever sort, or even corporate world, listen to the HiTech Podcast?
We put in the effort. We show up. I mean, like, one of the things we just love about this is if there's a technology, we look at it, we research it, we get word from use it, or we ourselves, right? If it's a methodology, a pedagogy, we have researched it, read about it, talked with teachers using it. Like, I just want to say we're not BuzzFeed, right? We're not just like putting things out there so you click on the link. We care about what we do. And so if you care about higher education, you care about corporate education, join us.
Yeah. I was going to say, yeah, that's it. We bring on a lot of different, at the end of the day, Will and I's focus is we love using technology. There's a tensionality behind the harness terminology that we use in our podcast, which is that we want to help people harness the power that technology has for good in what they're doing and creating learning experiences, helping people learn, teaching, all those things. But while we love the technology side, Will and I are very passionate about when we talk about technology, we bring it. Pedagogy is first on the technology. I've interacted with a lot of different people in a lot of different environments with technology and education now over the last couple of years, and I think there's this misnomer where like when we talk about technology in education, we want to get to a point where technology becomes the background, which is kind of in the background working. I totally agree with, but what kind of gets mixed up in that, which is I see in education a lot as educators, is that we don't have to think about how we use the technology. Then we just kind of use it. Will and I are very focused on, yes, technology should be the background, but we have to think carefully about how it aligns with our pedagogy, why we teach, what we're doing, and we have to think carefully about how we are going to leverage it and bring that in. And Will and I have a ton of guests that come on the podcast. You're not just hearing from us, you're hearing from real educators, combined then with Will and I's experience of both. Will and I have multiple years of experience now in building digital learning experiences, and we've both had to do things like integrate technology across programs of courses, and so we leverage that experience combined with the educators, some of the teaching him and I to do to kind of create a interesting experience.
I love it. Awesome. So real quick, we're about to wrap up. Where can people find the HiTech Podcast and connect with y'all?
HiTechPod.us is our website. It has links to all the other good stuff. We're really trying to be very active in YouTube and Twitter, which are both at HiTech Podcast. So, or X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, whatever it is these days. Who knows what
It's
it is
still
by
Twitter.
the time this releases, right? But yeah, HiTechPod.us is the website. At HiTech Podcast is most of our social media.
So cool. I'll put that stuff in the show notes. And it's been great talking to y'all. I appreciate it. And, I wish you the best in all you do. Thanks so much for sharing with us HiTech Podcast. It's awesome. And I listen. I think all my listeners should too. So wish you guys the best. Take care now.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Hey, you have been listening to Teaching Learning Leading K12, a podcast to help you help kids achieve their dreams. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is a member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is a member of the podcast network based in Canada called Voice Ed Radio. Voice Ed Radio, your voice is right here. The opinions expressed on Teaching Learning Leading K12 are those of the guests and host. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is intended to share ideas, advice, and suggestions. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is produced for educational purposes. Hey, thanks for listening. It would be awesome if you visited my website at stephenmiletto.com and connected with me, left a review, and listened to more episodes. And by the way, you could also share it with your friends, with your family, and your colleagues. Thanks so much. You're awesome.